Well, it is May 22nd on Read Through the Word, and it's great to be with you today. We're going to be looking at one verse in 1 Kings 7:12. One verse in, let me start over again. In 1 Kings 7, verse 12, that's the verse we're going to be looking at. But that's our key verse. But I want us to zero in on, and I'm not going to read this aloud. So if you haven't done your reading today, that's fine. You can go back and read it later. But I really want you to pay attention to the section, Solomon builds his palace. And the length that it took him to build his palace was 13 years. To build the temple was 7 years. Okay? And then look at all of the different extravagance. All the extravagance in the temple. And then when you get to verse 12, it says this: the walls of the courtyard, the great courtyard, were built so that there was one layer of cedar beams between every 3 layers of finished stone, just like the walls of the inner courtyard of the Lord's temple with its entry room. That was alarming to me, that he equated his palace, he created his palace with the same splendor, perhaps even more splendor, I don't know for sure, but with the same, splendor as the temple. And this led me on a little chase. So I want you to hang in there with me and hold on, because it led me to the book of Haggai, which is fun to say and equally as fun to find in the Bible, especially the chronological Bible. But Haggai was a prophet, considered a minor prophet because his book is small. But he was a minor prophet that spoke into the lives of the Israelites upon their return to Jerusalem. So hang in there with me, like I said. Solomon has ordered things correctly here. He built the temple, then he built his palace. Of course, that's we want to put God first, then we'll put ourselves next. But this was a lifestyle that Solomon established for himself, and an example. He's an example to his people of how to live your life. Well, when I went over to Haggai and read Haggai 1, 5 and 6, it startled me. In fact, I included it in our notes today for the Message version. Because though Solomon was not alive at the time, the people and how they lived their lives, all these generations filtered down and filtered down and filtered down. I mean, let's be honest. Don't we take our cue on the decisions that we make and how we live our lives on how we were raised and what's been passed down to us? Good, bad, or indifferent. I have a stubborn streak a mile long. And I get it, honestly, from my mama and my daddy. That doesn't make it right, but that's truth. That is the way that it is. I also prioritize the Lord in my life because of my mama and daddy. I also tithe because of the example of my mama and my dad. So what I'm saying here is the translation of living and prioritizing the Lord first, the translation of that, and loving the Lord your God with all of your heart, mind, soul, and strength was lost over the generations. And it all fell on the leaders, and it fell on the generations, not just like the kings, but the generations not telling the next generations. I go back to Deuteronomy 6, and I think of, they were supposed to put it on the doorpost, the words of the Lord on the doorpost. They're supposed to wear them in those phylacteries, either on their heads, rolled up on their heads, or on their armbands. They were supposed to tell the next generation, the children's children, the children's children's children, how to live rightly. And somewhere along the way, the translation was broken. The passing down had been forgotten. Don't know where it started. But I thought it interesting to tie these two things together, this mindset of Solomon and his extravagance. And this isn't all. I mean, you'll see. I mean, he has horses. He has chariots. He has many wives. He's setting this standard of not having priorities in order. And then when the Israelites are taken into captivity and they're brought back, there's this period of being really excited and fervor and wanting to put God first and wanting to worship the one and only and true God, right? But then they had this opposition. And we'll read about that when we get to Nehemiah. But it got hard. The building started and then it stopped. And it was paused for a long time because of the opposition and the obstacles that were set before them. So I wanted us to think about the idea of keeping our priorities in order so we never get to that place. That we keep our priorities in order so those that are coming behind us, those that are seeing how we live, will repeat this cycle and break the cycle of not having our priorities in order. This was interesting. Robert Alden, one of the commentaries that I study, said many Christians are like those ancient Hebrews, somehow convincing themselves that economy in constructing church buildings is all important, while at the same time sparing no expense in acquiring their personal luxuries. Another commentary said this: the problem was simply wrongly ordering priorities. They were content to let the cause of the Lord suffer at the expense of their comfort. Instead, at the expense of their comfort. Instead, they should have felt no rest until the work of God was as prosperous as their personal lives, and be as willing to sacrifice for work of God as they were for personal comfort and luxury. And words like personal comfort and luxury and personal luxuries and sparing no expense and the expense of our comfort, those kinds of words ring loudly in our day and age, don't they? And when I read Haggai 1, 5, and 6, it really rocked me. Because when we have our priorities out of order, our spiritual health is in jeopardy. This is what Haggai says. Take a good hard look at your life. Think it over. You've spent a lot of money, but you haven't much to show for it. You keep filling your plates, but you never get full. You keep drinking and drinking and drinking, but you're always thirsty. You put on layer after layer of clothes, but you can't get warm. And the people who work for you, what are they getting out of it? Not much. A leaky, rusted out bucket. That's what. When we have our priorities out of order, The worldly work that we do is futile. Satisfaction that the world offers is short-lived, or the pleasures of the world are short-lived, and satisfaction that we seek never comes. We're going to keep drinking and keep drinking and keep drinking, and we're always going to be thirsty. We're going to keep filling our plates, and we're always going to be hungry. We're going to keep trying to put clothes on, and we're going to still be cold. Keeping our priorities in order is hard work. It is not easy. It's hard work, especially living in the prosperous place that we live in called America. Even the poorest here in our country is richer than most. But keeping your priorities in order, though hard and has many obstacles, it is worth all the hard work and every obstacle that we face. It's worth it. Because then and only then are we living the life that God wants us to live. Life of humility, life of generosity, life of love and kindness, joy and peace, the fruit of the Spirit that Paul talks about in Galatians 5. Don't you want those? I want those. And I want those to be seen in my life. I want to enjoy those in my life, but I also want them to be seen in my life. And we can only do that when we have our priorities in order. And this is just one more step in Solomon's life that demonstrates he really doesn't have them in order. He really doesn't. Greed and power and all of that will be, well, it becomes his downfall. Have you read Ecclesiastes? Well, we will real soon. We'll see you next time on Read Through the Word.